Good morning, good afternoon again. For the very numerous participants, by the way, we almost had 100 participants and subscriptions to today's session. So we've had the first part of our discussions were really about the policy and the standardization work. Now we really want to dig in deep into a series of use cases of how IoT is applied in a smart cities context. And we will start with a use case in Europe called Eurocities and the city of Bordeaux by the presentation by Mr. Colinet. Christophe, are you already online? Yes, you are.
Yes.
So the floor is yours.
Yes, I am. Okay, thank you, Tony, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about what we are doing here in Bordeaux. So first of all, I would like to talk about interoperability and interoperability of what kind, because the services we have to provide to our citizens are often complex and cumbersome to maintain and to develop. Confidence, of course, is essential to make massive investments. In the example we propose today, which is an advanced mobility service, it's essential to be able to change the functional bricks of each service without jeopardizing the overall investment. So that's the reason why interoperability is key for us to do so, and it allows the service bricks to be interchanged without too much cost. We have already existing examples in our daily life of what interoperability brings. Of course, we had the very recent example of the charging cables, which were standardized to the USB-C plug for Europe. And examples of what if we don't have interoperability, for example, in India, and thanks to the European project CSA, we could see that when you don't have interoperability for the electric vehicle charging systems, that would and that has already cost a lot to Indian government because they had to install both Japanese and Chinese charging technology in order to roll out their EV charging program for all the country. And of course, we have the example of the 5G, which I will not describe anymore. Everyone is very well aware of what can bring 5G to the telecommunication for everyone all over the world. And if I talk about interoperability and more about smart cities, we do have in our communities different services to manage for transport, for security, and so on. And to maintain the control of the data and to maintain data sovereignty, which we are seeking and looking for, we have to control the capture of that data from the inception. In the opposite, if we have to sign contracts with utilities, it is often very complex and it requires a lot of energy to control their application. And if we are regarding to the digital sobriety, which we are very much looking for 2 or 3 years now, it seems clear that collecting data directly at the source avoids all the operations linked to ETLs, I mean extraction, transformation, loads systems in charge of transforming this data to feed a data warehouse or a data lake. And Enrico already talked about 1M2M, but for us, 1M2M was a very good value proposition because it interworks the different underlying IoT technologies, devices, of course, applications, and data together with one another. And that, for us, abstract and hide the complexity of these different forms of interworking from the various stakeholders. So it's how to simplify the life for IoT stakeholders and especially for communities I represent today. But more than standard and how can I say, an interoperability standard solution, it's also one implement is also there is also a certification tool which is also important for the communities, because more than being compliant with a 1M2M standard, it's important for us to be sure that there is a stamp of certification also on the solution provided by the providers. Now, looking at the European approach of smart cities, I will look a little in a few years earlier in an Espresso project, which was in 2016, a support action for a systemic standardization approach to enhance smart cities and communities, and propose a state-of-the-art of standards dedicated to smart cities platforms. The project lasted 18 months and finally concluded that it was a leisure to try to identify and standardize all the bricks of a smart city platform, that this approach was only suitable for technicians, and that the operational and the industrial launch of these platforms could only come from political decision makers who could not integrate this type of approach. The approach had to be simplified, and that's what we try to do through this very simplified scheme, distinguishing only 3 domains through the lower one to capture the data from the inception, as I explained just before. So it's the device zone layer, Internet of Things and other legacy systems coming from the communities. The data lake, which is the main purpose we have to feed this data lake, and the access service and the domain service, which is meaningful to expose the data we collected in the data lake. To do so, and Olavi already talked about this process, we thought about interoperability mechanisms. One first from the data lake to the access services and the domain services, and which we call the Northbound, which is a first MIM layer, and the other one, which was to collect the data, and which we call the Southbound. That's the scheme, and we wanted to implement a proof of concept of this to prove that this not only a concept, but it was more than this, and that's what we did in 2017 in Bordeaux. We had the opportunity to get funds from the national government in France, and we decided to deploy this platform, allowing us to manage smart street lights, but also meters, and also access control, EV chargers, and waste collecting system, and so on. And we decided, and that was a big choice, an important choice for us, to write in the procurement and to specify that the sensors connectivity to this IoT network has to be compliant with the 1M2M specifications release 2 at this time. Enrico said we are already at the release 4 now, to evaluate the reactivity of the providers toward these specifications. We had many different providers and from different backgrounds, which proposed to deliver the global smart city service. And however, they could just address a part of the solution, depending on the department they were looking for. There is only one which could comply with 1M2M. It was P. And by the way, there were also the cheapest solution, and that was the best technical one that was proposed to us. But we were not at this time the only ones who chose 1M2M, because My Smart Life, which is a European program H2020 SCC1, bringing on board Hamburg, the city of Hamburg in Germany, but also Helsinki in Finland and also Nantes in France. And they also decided in 2021 to deploy 1M2M for this smart city program. This is also the European communication approach. So Olavi also explained the works in progress we had in the technical group, in the Living in EU technical group, and the MIM Plus technical specifications. In the release V3, I extracted this short sentence: 1M2M release 2 at this time and release 3. 1M2M release 2 has been formally approved as ITUT. Enrico said it before also. 1M2M is a partnership project where EU is represented by ETSI, that specifies a common service layer for IoT. And 1M2M is applicable to many verticals, including smart cities, that we could demonstrate through the proof of concept I just presented before. And 1M2M specification covers the requirements, the architecture, the APIs, security, which is also a growing concern for the cities and communities, and interworking and data models. Although not chartered to produce open source, there are several open source implementations supporting 1M2M, and I wanted to talk about 1M2M and the South Korean Ocean program that was described by my colleague from KT just before. It's also something which more and more countries are adopting now, because the release 2 specification has been transposed by TSDSI, the Indian national standardization organization. And I feel now that these international agreements and standards will give more confidence for the public sector, that what we are looking for, and they will enlarge the market for the business through sharing experience with the foreign countries, disseminate best practices between Europe and partner countries, and create a long-term partnership between cities, academics, and startups. So that was my presentation today, but if you need more further attention, I can be at your disposal. You have all my coordinates here. Thank you very much for the time, and I remain at your disposal.
Thank you so much,
and
Christophe.
I hope I kept the time. I hope so.
Thank you so much, Christophe.